Hi everybody, it's crazy, it's Monday, and it's time for the FBGE video of the week. Now before I get started, gotta get a shout out to my cousins because you guys rock. To my crazy fam, I love you guys. Now we're up to episode number 118, and last week we left off with, I did it right this time, understanding the code, which is on page 28 if you're following along. This is going to be, broke down into like 5 parts as you see. I'm not going to be able to do all 5 because it's very long. It gives a very good detailed, description of how the program is divided down. We left off with this file last week. It's called camera navigation, and all the code, if you slide this over and slide that up, this is the code that they're talking about right here. Okay, it is over 400 lines. Okay, and in code wise, that's actually pretty small. It's not really big at all. Okay, I've dealt with some code lines that were over thousands, 4 or 5 thousand lines of code. And most of the time, it's not all encapsulated into one area, one complete file. It's usually broken down into different files. So, without any further ado, let's get started. Okay, understanding the code. You can find the camera navigation PY, okay, in this blend file, or you can actually find it in the nav system. If you go into, you won't be able to find it in here, but if you go into 4, which should be what we're in, okay, down here it will have the camera navigation.py, okay? So it will be in that folder. Just look for it, and if you've got a program that runs it, if you've got the Python interpreter, the IDE, you can actually look at it that way and just see it in normal code. Okay, there's other ones you can get. You can look around on the internet and find all kinds. Okay, right now I'm just using Blender, and I'm going to show it in Blender right here. So that way you can see what it's like and how it is. Okay, all right, so this program is divided into 5 different parts. Okay, part 1 is global initialization. Okay, that's basically kind of like this stuff right here. Okay, the event management, internal functions, game interaction, and more Python. Okay, so I'll probably get to maybe event management, or get to the bottom of event management for today. Maybe, maybe not. We're going to try for it. So here we go. Let me switch you over to the diagram, because they're going to be showing it. Okay, now the diagram in this figure right here illustrates how they relate to one another. Now let's take an inside look at each of them. Global initialization initializes variables. Event management does the keyboard and mouse. Flies, I tell you. Internal functions calculate rotation, calculate direction, and Blender interaction. Okay, that's not why I did that. Switches the camera and rotates the position. Okay, and then more Python, the collision detection, and stick to the ground. Okay, so that's basically every frame. These right here, from the event management to the more Python, are all every single frame. Okay, this happens every single frame. Global is just the first frame because it's just initializing everything. Okay, so this will not happen over and over and over and over and over, but these right here will. These guys right here will go over and over and over and over and over and continue going over and over. Okay. All right. So let me kick you back over to here. There we go. Okay. Now you could follow along. Okay, because it'll show the camera navigation.init world. That should be somewhere around in here. Okay, define init world. Okay, so this is part of it. Okay, and then I mean a lot of this has changed a little bit because there's different things in here that will change, variable wise and everything else. So look over this and kind of just figure it out and follow along with me if you can. All right. There is one function that is loaded once at the beginning of the game. We call it the init world. Okay, init underscore world inside scripts py. Okay, so basically that's this right here, define init world. Okay, this is going to run once. Okay, when it gets down to here, this is all going to run one time. This grouping right here. Okay, that's going to run once when we call it. Okay, once it gets called, this is going to run one time. Okay, we are going to check the priority option in the Python controller to make sure this script runs on top of all the others. In this function, you will first find the global initialization. We are going to store in the global module logic we are going to store in the global module logic all the elements we are going to use or going to reuse over the scripts. That way we don't need to get the object list every time we need to put a particular object. A common technique is to store the scene object as well. Therefore, for every scene, you can run a script that at the beginning of the game that stores a reference to the current scene globally. Okay? My buddy Dave can literally tell you everything about that, but it's easier to play with it yourself and figure it out. Now, the first one here is g.scenes. Okay, that's the one we're going to do first. Okay, and then 34 is also the next one. These are the two things that are get pulled, okay, first. All right, you want to get this current scene, and you want to get all the objects, okay? Save and load a game with global dictionary, or global dict. Okay, since the module logic is accessible from all the functions and all the scenes, it can be used to store global objects. If you need to preserve those objects and variables between game sessions, i.e. after you close your game, you can store them inside the global the dictionary logic.globaldict and use logic.saveGlobalDict, okay? And logic.loadGlobalDict to save and load it, okay? So if you want to save it to global dictionary, okay, you would use the logic.save.globaldict and then your file. Same thing with logic.load globaldict. It would reload it. That's kind of your save and load function, believe it or not, in most games. Okay. To store the camera function, we are first going to create a global dictionary named cameras. Okay. So here we've got global dictionary called camera. Okay, now, believe it or not, that right there stores a dictionary, okay? Those two little funky brackets is what I call them. I don't know the technical name for them, but those two right there will make it a dictionary, okay? We will use it to store the camera objects, their pivot, and the original orientation of the orbit pivot, okay? So you've got this right here, which will store, basically start the dictionary, okay? Then you're going to take all the camera orbits, okay? Basically your camera objects, and this right here is camera orbit, and then pivot equals objects.orbital pivot, so it'll store that as well. It puts them in there, okay, into the camera's dictionary, and then underneath each one, it's those, okay? It puts in orb equals camera, and then your orientation, your pivot, world dictionary. Well, world orientation, and then your pivot. Okay, and then for the flying camera, it does the same. Okay, in your camera, you have objects, camera move, and pivot, and objects move pivot. Okay, and you're gonna also put that into cameras with all its information. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, we ended at 52. Okay, so that's basically what we started so far. Okay, now that we have our objects instanced, we can set the initial values for our functions, such as the camera rotation restrictions. we don't want the camera to look under the ground. Thus, we need to manually set our limits. Although we could set those limits directly in the orbit and look functions. Having all the parameters in the same part of code is easier to tweak and slightly faster since they don't need to be reassigned every frame. Okay? External settings file. Another common workflow is to have a separate Python file, for example, settings.py, with all the variables set. Then, in your working script, you simply have to do is just import settings.py and use eg settings.left. Okay, so basically, this is would be kind of your settings, and you can actually put it in a different file, and you can call it like you would call it up here. Like you would import math utils as M and import math as M, lowercase m. Okay, you can import things, and you can actually import, your settings.py as, settings. Okay, so everything would be the same as like how G is here. Here it says logic equals G. So your logic.camera, it would be that. It would say this is logic because you're saving it, okay? You're importing the logic as the letter G. Okay, that's the variable you're giving it, so that way it's easier to put in. Okay? Alright, so next we have is the camera orbit settings. We did that. Okay. That's these right here. Okay, and you're going to have angle restriction in degrees, okay? And then you get your left angle, your right angle, your top angle, and your bottom angle. Okay, having them in there helps out a lot. Okay, and you can convert all of them to radians. Okay, so now you're going to use math. Okay, if you remember up here, see, math as lowercase m. Okay, we're not using math utils, we're using math. Okay, so left equals m radians left, and then same right, same top, and same bottom. Basically what you're doing is using the math to do all this information for you, so you don't have to fight with it. Okay? Alright, then you're going to store them globally. g.orb limits, and then you're going to put them in, and you see these little brackets right here. Okay, it's going to store them each as left equals left, right equals right, top equals top, and bottom equals bottom. Okay? So whenever you type left, it's going to say, okay, it was left stored. So what is left stored here? It's this right here. Okay? And of course, this is reading this left right here. Once a variable has been overwritten with the same letter, you don't want to put left, 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 and left, because if not, it's just going to have this last one. Python can be a little tricky when you do stuff like that. Okay? So move on to, okay, last but not least, we need to create variables we are going to read and write between the functions. Initializing them here allows us to read them since the first frame of the game. This is especially important for variables that are going to be used in the event management functions. For different values of nav mode and walk fly, we are going to run different functions for the camera movement. Okay, and that's way down here in 103 and 104, which is these two right here, orbit and walk. Okay. Now, basically, that right there ends that. That ends the initialization. Okay. All right, this right here is your installation all the way down to here. Okay. Now, in event management, yeah, I'm at 14, yeah. Also, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to end it here at event management. It's the second one, okay? You got your globals. Now we're going to work on event management, which is your keyboard and your mouse functions, okay? And we'll do that next week. See, switch over to, if I get it right. Nope, I did the wrong one. Okay, so next week, it'll be page 32, okay? And it's kind of in the middle. No, it's right at the top of page 32, okay? Event management, page 32, and we'll continue on with that. Like I said, that is keyboard and mouse. So we'll go with that next week to kind of get you in the flow of it. So kind of review this, look it over, see what you can figure out, and, you know, play with some of the variables like these right here, your angles and stuff, to see what the angles are. And if you want to make it to where you don't lose it, you can always put the original variable number right there, okay? So that way it knows that, hey, you know, this is what it was, but you've got it set to another number. That can kind of help you out, okay? Oh, you can't even see that. Well, you can always put a pound sign in right behind the variable, sorry, not variable, variable, okay? And put the original number there, and then write a new number in the right behind the equal sign, and you will never lose that number. You can always go back, oh, what was that number that I put for bottom? 10. Okay, so that way you can just work with that. But enough about that. We'll get into more of that next week. Event management, page 32. See you next week.